All right, let's move on to the NASCAR Cup Series because we did have a Cup Series race at Iowa this past weekend. And if you tune into last week's show, I didn't have high hopes for this race. I really didn't have high hopes for this race, mainly because of them only paving half the track. We've seen how this car reacts on short tracks, even though Iowa, I guess, is technically not a short track, but it races like a short track. So it has a lot of those same features. And surprisingly, even though half the track was unraceable, in my opinion, that top lane in 1 and 2, the top lane in 3 and 4, that whole half of the corner is unusable, very similar to Texas. But they were able to make it work with the track that they had. We saw 3 wide racing. We saw 4 wide on some of these restarts. With that, it really showed how talented these drivers are, in my opinion. With that amount of space, and they were able to make it work as often as they were. Obviously, there was wrecks and there was contact throughout the day. I was surprisingly impressed with the race we saw, and I think we probably should just actually start with this. We were going to start with the breaks, but let's just start talking about how we felt about this race and what the future should potentially be of this track. And they've talked about repaving this racetrack, and we don't know if they're going to repave the whole track or just part. Junior suggested just repaving part of the track. I want to get the boys' thoughts on that. I'll start with Cory. Cory, first of all, how did you feel about the race that we saw? I personally was pleasantly surprised. It wasn't like the best race of the season. I would probably put it middle of the pack, but I thought it was going to be one of the worst races of the year and ended up being middle of the pack. So I was pleasantly impressed about that. And also, how do you feel about the future of this racetrack? We know they're going to repave it. You think they should repave the entire surface and make it just one consistent surface, or you think they should repave just the top lane where it didn't get repaved before? What do you think about that?
I mean, I like Iowa. I think I hinted at it last week that it's one of the more entertaining short tracks we have. Like, yeah, it's difficult to pass. Dirty air is a problem, but that's every short track. That's everywhere with this car. And Iowa still allows you to run side by side for 10, 15 laps versus most other short tracks. It's like once they're at your inside, you're pretty much screwed. It's like you have to back up or you're going to get passed by multiple cars, right? So I was looking forward to Iowa. I think it led to what I was expecting. I was happy with the race. I thought it was entertaining. I was beside you going like it's up there for one of the more entertaining short tracks, right? I mean, if it's considered a short track. And but yeah, I liked Iowa. I mean, obviously there's definitely ways to make every single track better and you can make Iowa better. But compared to all the other short tracks that are dealing with a lot of issues, Iowa was entertaining. And part of me thinks Junior's right because I feel like if you repave the entire track, it's going to be a one lane track for a race or 2 or 3 or 4 years or whatever it is before you can actually find more speed in some other grooves. I wouldn't be opposed to doing just the outside of the track because maybe that'll create more grip and make the outside more usable and make it passable, you know. But it's a good discussion to have. I have a feeling if you repave the whole track, you run into the risk of having the first 3 or 4 years of the track just being a one lane track, and then everyone's going to be like, "Well, why are we going to Iowa?"
Well, honestly, if I'm being honest, I really think either way they decide to go here. That's why there's been a small demographic of people that have said, don't change a thing, even though half of the corner is unusable. And the reason they're saying that, and I'm worried about this myself, is if they end up repaving just the top half of the racetrack or the whole track, either way, those first couple of years, I personally think it's going to be even harder to pass because you're going to actually be able to use the high lane. And I mean, I think it's also going to produce more slide job and opportunities for those crazy sort of slide job passes. So we'll be able to hear Junior yell, slide job, slide job. We'll be able to hear that. But I am worried about that myself, no matter which way we go here, that for 3, maybe 4 years, that top lane, it's going to be so hard to pass. You can just hold up against the wall and you're not going to be able to clear somebody on the bottom unless you completely send it in there. So I am personally worried about that. So honestly, I'm undecided. I'm undecided on which I would want. I like Junior's idea of just doing the top because, first of all, you just repaved the bottom like 2 years ago at this point. And it also gives each part of the racetrack kind of its own sort of character. You get what I'm saying? Kind of has its own little character to it. But also, but then repaving the whole track, it makes it more consistent. So I'm very undecided on what I want them to do. All I know is I do want them to repave the track because, in my opinion, it just looks stupid. It looks unprofessional. It looks stupid. I want the whole track to be usable. I don't want just half the track to be usable, even if that means we suffered through 2, 3, 4 years of not great racing. Because once the track gets worn down, it'll be similar to the way Iowa was before, where you can just race. That's why people loved Iowa so much, because you could race anywhere on the racetrack, and eventually it will turn into that. Tyler, how do you feel about? First of all, how did you feel about the race itself that we saw on Sunday? Were you pleasantly surprised like me? And what do you think the future is when it comes to paving this racetrack?
It was definitely a good race. I mean, it wasn't a barn burner by any means, but it was a good race. So, the problem with paving any track is you're going to run into the fact that you're going to have a couple of years of it sucking. We don't run these tracks enough or consistently enough to break them in a fast-paced manner. So, repave is needed, right? So it's kind of one of those things that kind of has to happen. But at the end of the day, we're going to suffer for a couple years for it. As race fans, we just need to kind of be understanding of that, and then hope that Iowa either breaks in faster, or maybe, like you said, they do something different and just pave the top to kind of get different break-in periods. I don't know. There's no good answer with anything when it comes to messing with a racetrack. So when it has to be done, it has to be done, and we're all going to be pissed about it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like it has to be, especially since they paved the bottom. If they never paved the bottom of this racetrack, I think there could be a slight argument on not paving it at all. But even then, you have, like, I saw the pictures. There's so many gaps and little holes. Like, this is a mangled racetrack when you look at it. And what Tyler's saying, it's very hard. We see these issues with tracks when they're first repaved because a lot of these tracks get raced on once or twice a year. Luckily with Iowa, they race NASCAR there, but they also race Indy cars there as well. So that's a little bit of a plus. That's a couple more races on the racetrack. But that's one of the reasons why we don't see these tracks worn in enough, because we don't see local series or anything racing on any of these tracks that NASCAR races on. Like, not even a Martinsville or a New Hampshire. I mean, they get the modified tour and stuff like that joining, but like tracks like Bowman Gray, they get raced on every week. A track like Iowa gets raced on, including the IndyCar series. It gets raced on 2 weekends for the entire year, while a lot of these local short tracks get raced on every weekend for the entire year, except for maybe like Christmas and stuff like that. So yeah, it's going to take a couple years to let it break in. And I just think it's a mandatory thing at this point for them to do. I think they're at risk of the track tearing up underneath them the next time they go. It's that bad at this racetrack. They need to get the track repaved. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about this? Iowa getting repaved? Do you want a full repave? Do you agree with Junior's idea of a partial repave and just repave the places you didn't repave prior? And also, how did you feel about the race on Sunday? I was pleasantly surprised. But let us know your thoughts about all that in the comments down below.